Is this what great again looks like? How are we supposed to see this? Let's ask Republican member of Congress, Dr. Rich McCormick, and Democratic member of Congress, Adam Smith. Good to see you both. Thank you for joining me, especially on a Friday night. Doc, you are a true fiscal conservative, meaning that you would like to see a lot less spending. You're not happy with where we were budgetarily going into it. When you hear these metrics and the concerns of the markets, what does it mean to you about what you want to see from the president?
Well, when you look at the stock market and you look at the adjustments, that's not surprising. Anytime you have a run of about 13%, you're going to have an adjustment, people taking their profits. Not worried about the stock market. The stock market is all about people speculating. But if you talk about tariffs and the real impact, especially on commodities, I've always been outspoken on this. I don't like commodities. I think it's not reciprocal tariffs. It's basically protectionism. I don't think it's a free market economy. I don't like to see that. I am worried about inflation. I'm worried about what it's going to impact our economy. But I think the president's very, very savvy in manipulating the economy in the right direction. We want to be closer to 2% inflation. We want to be closer to a 2% growth so our GDP can continue to have a healthy growth and support an economy that's going to benefit all people.
But we're not there right now, Adam Smith. And how would you lean into your namesake in terms of ideas that the Democrats have that are better than what we're seeing right now?
Well, I mean, to begin with, I think the tariffs have been chaotic. So idea number one would be pick something, stick with it. Don't introduce so much unpredictability to the market. So I think what President Trump is doing right now is having great damage to the economy. And I think the way to get after inflation is to not introduce that uncertainty. So that would be number one. And then I do think having a fiscally responsible budget would make sense. And as we've talked about before, I think Rich was on the show with me before, I think that the next blow to all of this is the Republican budget, which they're trying to pass, which is going to drive up the debt and the deficit by putting in place tax cuts, extending some tax cuts, adding some others. So I think that is not going to help on the inflation side either.
So, Rich, that's the big question. Who's going to win? You or the guys in your party who want it both ways? Guys who want to pay for everything in the budget. God forbid we had what you had down in the Bush days, Bush 1, that led to Clinton having a good economic success budgetarily, which was the pay-as-you-go rules. You don't have them anymore. But who's going to win? The guys who want to pay for it in the budget, or the guys who say, well, the president wants to spend, but he says the tax cuts will pay for themselves? Who's going to win?
I think if you look at the history of what we did with the last pay cuts, the tax cuts, it actually benefited the economy. If you do a analysis, literally a third-party analysis of how it benefited America and the economy, I think what benefited Biden really in the economy when he had a strong economy is those tax cuts and the business expansion, the expansion of GDP, the expansions of growth and jobs and things you can be taxable for. I think is a net benefit. Matter of fact, I know it was a net benefit. Anybody who spends it differently doesn't understand how it benefited the Biden administration. When you talk about the tariffs that have been applied, some of them I'm not big support of, but some of them have been real in their temporary status, but they've actually come back with real benefits to America, both in the behavior in other nations and also in reciprocal tariffs that have been against us for many, many years. So I'm hoping that we'll win this debate. I'm sure the public will decide it. But right now, I hate to say it to Mr. Smith, but we're riding a high on popularity and they're riding a low. And I think they pick the wrong fights a lot of times.
Well, this fight, I think, is the right fight.
Go ahead. Yeah, I was going to say Adam's not a culture warrior, but go ahead.
Yeah, those aren't the fights I want to pick. I want to pick the fight that, Trump has had a very negative impact on the economy. Inflation was going down. Now it's going up. Jobless claims are going up. Stock market's going down. Uncertainty is rampant. Consumer confidence is down. So the fight we're picking is we can do better than this on the economy. And to your point about the tax cuts and the impact they have, it's also true that during the 4 years of the Trump administration, the debt went up more than it has during any 4 years in the history of this country. And yes, if you spend a lot more money than you're taking in, you will get a short-term little sugar boost. There's no doubt about that. But I thought the whole point of the Republican Party was we have to be fiscally conservative. We have to get that under control. And now we're just pushing more sugar boosts. And by the way, too much of that wealth is going to the hands of very few people and not really helping people who are struggling economically. Elon Musk is worth $300-400 billion. That's great. But what's that doing for people who can't afford housing in my district? So we got to spread that opportunity out more widely. And I don't think these tax cuts do that.
You got to
separate those two points, though. If you talk about the tax cuts that benefited us with tax income, versus the spending. The spending is a problem. We all agree that we spend way too damn much. We're very inefficient in the way we are facing down this problem because we get enough tax revenue, about 4.5 per year, but we spend 7. And that CR that we just passed that all the Democrats voted against, that's still sustainment of the Nancy Pelosi era of spending. We haven't done anything to correct that. We have a spending problem in D.C., and that's what we haven't tackled. I don't think this is a matter of increasing taxes. If we got rid of those tax cuts that benefited the entire Biden administration, it would be the largest tax increase we've ever had. We don't want to do that. That's not good for America. That's not good for jobs. That's not good for the revenue that we bring into the government.
I completely disagree on what. Yeah. So, and where the federal tax code is at. I mean, cutting taxes is not always the only economic solution that you have available to you. I think there are ample reasons to invest in this country, even if the tax rates go back to where they were in 2017. The economy, look, we added more jobs in the last 3 years of the Obama administration than we did in the first 3 years of the Trump administration. And by the way, the first 3 years of the Trump administration were pretty good. I'm not arguing that.
Yeah, they were good.
But we added all those jobs with the tax rates back to what they were before these tax cuts were put in place in the first place. And what those tax cuts did do is they reduced our revenue and added to the debt.
Overall, I think you're wrong. I think the tax revenues increased. The jobs that you benefited last year of Trump and the 4 years of during Biden were all result of having lower taxes. Lower taxes always result in more jobs and more taxable income.
Here's the X factor that we're not talking about, both on the debt side for Trump and for Biden, and on the revenue side, the pandemic. I don't know how you judge, the New York Times had their own economic field taking a look at the tax cuts, saying they didn't pay for themselves. But then, after all the money that was dumped into the economy during the pandemic, now there was a different analysis that could be had. Anyway, fellas, I appreciate the conversation. Let's keep talking as the negotiations continue. Adam Smith, have a great weekend. Now, I know you're heading out to dinner, Doc. I know you. I see you got the hair working. You got your pins on. I know he's going to impress somebody, Doc. You're still in the office. This is how, we're working it. Look at this glory boy here that we got. Doc McCormick, thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend, both of you. Thank you for being on.